Hello and welcome to another episode of Texas River Legends. In this episode, we are going to be continuing the Fly Tying Made Simple series and tying a simple Pheasant Tail Nymph. Now, this is actually a simplified Pheasant Tail Nymph. The Pheasant Tail Nymph was pretty simple to fly to tie, but it had a few things that could be pretty challenging and that really weren't necessary to catch fish. So this is the bare bones, essential, just fish catching parts of the pheasant tail, simplified and turn into a very simple fly to catch, which I think makes it more effective because you're not as afraid to hang it up and you're able to tie more. So to start off, you're going to be using any standard nymph hook will work. I'm going to be using a Daiichi number 1710 nymph hook. This is a standard nymph hook, two times long, 1 times strong, and it is a size 16. That's what I'm going to be tying this fly on. And I'm also going to be using some 6/0 black thread. That's kind of the standard thread, but whatever size it works best for the size hook you're using. For size 14, 16, even 18, 6/0 thread is a really good size, and even a little bit bigger. So start your thread on the hook, leaving some space behind the eye. You want maybe two or three eye lengths behind the eye, and you're gonna wrap back to level with about the barb on the hook. Then you're gonna come back forward to where you started your tying thread, and you can snip. You can snip or break the tag in free. I'm gonna be snipping because 6/0 is pretty strong thread. So then you're gonna be tying in your ribbing. Now, the ribbing is one of the most important parts of the Pheasant Tail Nymph. It adds some flash. So I'm going to be using medium-sized copper wire. This is Danville's medium copper wire. 6 to 8 inch length will tie you a lot of flies. So don't discard this piece of wire. Put it away on your tying bench so you don't lose it. You're gonna tie in just the very end of the wire, right at where you started the thread. Quick trick, it helps to give your thread a counterclockwise spin, as you can see me doing, because that will actually flatten out the thread and help it catch things better while not adding too much bulk. So then you're going to want to wrap and let thread torque carry that wire over to the far side of the hook, because that will help it not jostle the tail. Leave your tying thread there. I like to tuck this wire down around my vise to keep it out of the way. Now for the next step, you're going to need what makes the majority of the fly, and that is this pheasant tail. Mine, I've used most of it. Now, you may see pheasant tails that are pretty expensive. I actually got this pheasant tail at Hobby Lobby, and I have tied a lot of flies with it, and it works perfectly fine. So this is just a craft pheasant tail. So any pheasant tail will really do. You're going to look for a group of maybe 8 to 10 fibers, like what we have right here. And then you're just going to pull down and strip those right off, like so. So now that you have your little bits of pheasant tail like so, what you're gonna do is take the very tips, lay them there. Now a lot of people will try to measure out the hook, you know, okay, 1 shank, you want about that much tail. What's easier to do is just tie it, to get a pinch wrap, tie it in close to the bend of the hook, take a couple wraps, and then you can actually pull on these ends of the pheasant tail and get it adjusted to about the length that you want. That's about good for what I like on mine. I like about a hook shank, maybe a little less than a hook shank, but that's about good. And then you're gonna take a couple more wraps and then a couple more wraps in front of it. Now, you're actually gonna want to then wrap your thread back up to the front and then back down. And what you're basically trying to do is build up a little bit of a taper to the body of the fly, so that when you wrap the pheasant tail around to create the body, it actually has a little bit of a tapered effect, which definitely helps its action and makes it look a little more real. So build up a nice little taper. You don't have to do anything crazy as long as it's slightly tapered towards the front of the fly. Then you're gonna wrap down to about there, about an eye behind about an eye length behind the hook eye. So then you're gonna take the ends of your pheasant tail. I like to leave the curlies on to keep them kind of connected together. And you're gonna carefully, see I already broke one. That's not a big deal if you do that. You're just gonna carefully start wrapping this pheasant tail forward. Now you're gonna wanna come back one time to get it to start at the bend and then wrap forward. What happens is, if you kind of wiggle it back and forth, this pheasant tail will spread out and you should be able to wrap all the way forward. Now you see when I wrap around, as I get in towards the end of this, I actually pinch with my finger, reach under and grab it again. That's the simplest way to do that. And then you're gonna come in, capture that with your tying thread like so, and just give it a couple nice tight wraps to secure it. The biggest problem I had when I started tying flies was you don't want to over wrap. So 3 to 4 wraps here, 3 to 4 tight wraps behind it, and 3 to 4 tight wraps in front of it, and that's secured, not going anywhere. You don't need to wrap like crazy, because if you do, you're gonna wind up having a big bulky fly. It doesn't look good. So now you can see we have a nice tapered body. We're gonna wrap back to where the body ends, maybe a little ways farther. We're gonna counter wrap with this wire. So because I wrapped the pheasant tail away from me, and that's how you wanna wrap that, you're gonna wanna wrap this wire towards you. So because you let the thread torque carry it to the far side of the hook, that when you start wrapping, it's not gonna jostle the tail. So you wanna start making even spiral wraps, a little bit of a gap between them. Really depends on how you like it to look as to how far apart you want them. As you can see, I'm giving it maybe 1/8 of an inch apart, but it's not really an exact science. 4 to 5 wraps on the body looks pretty good, and then you're gonna wrap one right there. Now, securing counter wrap materials is a skill that every fly tyer needs to know, and it's also a very challenging thing to try to learn. The reason securing counter wrap materials is so complicated is if you were to wrap the pheasant tail you wrapped away from you, and you're wrapping your thread away from you as well. So when you capture it, it's just tightening it more and helping it to not start slipping. But if you start to wrap this wire away from you, it's gonna start to loosen itself because it was wrapped towards you. So what you wanna do, loop your tying thread around the wire and use it to momentarily change the direction of your tying thread, so then you're wrapping towards yourself. And now you can easily secure the wire wherever you need to go, and then you just, once again, take it around so that you can change it back to the way you were wrapping, and that is very secure wire. Now you want to pull your bobbin up to brace the hook like so, and then you can just helicopter to break this wire. You can just helicopter to break this wire off close. A lot of people cut it, but really that's just not a good idea. You want a helicopter because it breaks off like that, perfectly flush and close. So then you're gonna wrap back to about there. You want a nice little chunk that's gonna be the thorax of the fly. Now the thorax of the fly is gonna be tied using pheasant tail, or not pheasant tail, strung peacock curl. Now you can purchase this, I've gotten some at craft stores, but good quality stuff is from the fly shops. Go get some from a local fly shop or a good online website. You're gonna select 2 hurls that have nice fluffy fibers and that aren't just flat and nasty, and you're actually gonna pull those out. Now, break off maybe 1 inch or so of the brittle tips, like so, and set the rest of your hurl aside. Now you're gonna tie these in with the tips just where you had your tying thread. Now, then you're gonna wrap this tying thread forward just to make a little bit more of an even ramp so you don't start losing fibers. Now this is key. Pheasant tail is also a very tricky material, not pheasant tail. Peacock curl can be a tricky material to work with because it's very hard to produce nice full bodies with it. So what you want to actually do, because you can see if I start wrapping, it's going to splay out and not stick to itself. It's going to become a sort of messed up body. So what you want to do is wrap right to behind where you tied that pheasant tail in, and then wrap forward behind your tying thread. What that's going to do is allow you to create a nice full body, as you can see, and it's going to keep that hurl pushed together, which allows you to create that nice full body right there. Now, on a normal pheasant tail, I would have not cut the extra pheasant tail that I used to tie the body off, and I'd be using it to make a wing case. But that wing case and legs that are caused when you tie that in at the end don't really change the aspect of the fly much to make it look a little more real. But for most of what we fish for with pheasant tails and such, it really doesn't need that. It's mostly for the fishermen. So we'll also, once again, take a few wraps behind peacock curl and a few wraps in front of it, fully secure that, and then snip it off. So the reason this is such an effective fly is even without the wing case, even without the legs, it still is a fish catching machine, and it's way simpler to tie. I probably do a video on how to tie a standard pheasant tail nymph, even though it's not really necessary, but this is the basic pattern. Now, you're gonna wanna get your whip finisher, which I have somehow seemed to lose. Oh no, I didn't. Get your whip finisher out, or you could do a half hitch, but what you wanna do for a whip fin, you just wanna do a 5 to 6 turn whip finish to build up a nice head. Now one trick, I've broken my thread a lot, just tying to tighten that knot down. What you want to do after you do the whip finish, give your thread a nice clockwise spin. That cords up the thread, strengthens it, and allows you to tighten that knot down so it's not going to slip or go anywhere. Then you can reach in with your tying scissors, snip that off, and I like to go in and clean up the little bit of material that's up there, although it doesn't really hurt the fish catching ability. The whole idea with this nymph was to keep it simple. You don't need a bunch of crazy pizzazzy flies to catch fish. All you need is a simple nymph. So that has a little bit of material sticking out the front. That can be hard to get to not be there, but the next step will allow you to trim it off. So then you're going to take your head cement right here, and nail polish works pretty well, and all you're going to do is get on your bodkin, or in my case, here's a nice hack. If you don't have a bodkin, just straighten out a hook and debarb it, and you got yourself a nice bodkin to apply. Both pick out dubbing and apply head cement. Now you're gonna get a nice drop of head cement, and you're just gonna dab that on there. You're gonna try to keep it out of the eye of the hook, and you wanna make sure you get the bottom and the sides and the top with head cement. And there you go. That is your finished simple pheasant tail fly. When that ties, you're good to go. And as you can see, it's pretty easy to tie up a whole mess of these really quick. Even if some of the heads have a little material sticking out, when that head cement dries, it actually makes it hard and you can snip it off real close without worrying about cutting your tying thread. But there you go, that is a simple and effective simplified pheasant tail nymph. Really is a great fly, nice and easy to tie, gives you a better look at it. And yeah, go out there and try it. It really catches fish just as good, if not better, than a standard pheasant tail nymph, and it's a breeze to tie. So thanks for watching. Get out there, tie some more flies, and catch some more fish.